I'm on dial. I'm just laughing because I think it's so slow here. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Somebody, okay. All right. You'll get there. Yeah. It's all set, yeah.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Ackermeyer, roll call, please.
Form.
Present.
Dr. Krebs.
Here.
Miss Reed.
Here.
Mr. Conley.
Here.
Mrs. Marks.
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here. All right, that moves us to the approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion? Moved by Dr. Krebs.
Support.
Any discussion?
Yes. Roger, in our last board meeting, I had mentioned at the start of the meeting during the discussion related to the agenda that there were some items that I had requested be added to our board agenda that you and the executive committee had elected not to include in the last meeting. I mentioned publicly that I understood and supported your desire to defer those items to the next board meeting, and specifically requested during that board session, last board meeting, that those items would be, asked for confirmation that those items would be added to the agenda. And I noted in the agenda that was published that they were not. So I just wanted to ask for clarification on why they were not included when you had stated in the last meeting that they would be included.
Could you provide some clarification?
Yeah.
For the executive committee, we reviewed the requests that were submitted. So I'm not sure what specifically.
So on Wednesday, October 18th, I had sent you a note and said, Roger, I request we add to the agenda of the Board of Education meeting for Monday, October 23rd, the following: for discussion, update on the status of Brighton Area Schools Title IX investigative report that was discussed with the Board of Education on Monday, 9/25, September 25th. The board agreed to release a report to the public that preserves the confidentiality of the involved parties while ensuring full and complete transparency with the public, to inform where district policies, processes, and procedures were not followed, and what corrective actions need to be implemented to preserve the integrity of our district's Title IX process going forward. And you had responded to me that, Andy, we set our agendas at the executive committee meetings on the Tuesday morning before each upcoming board meeting. We are having a closed session with our auditor on Monday's agenda regarding her analysis of the Title IX cases.
Great.
So that's one of the items that I'd asked to have on this agenda.
So two things. One, I don't necessarily agree with your characterization of any audit, but as you know, we have a closed session tonight, which is a continuation of, it is on the agenda to address the topic as part of our closed session, which is what is referenced in there. So it is part of our agenda.
So maybe let me clarify, Roger. In a prior board meeting, I publicly requested that this board release to the public the Title IX investigative report that we reviewed in closed session as a board. The motion that I made was carried by the full board. And during that meeting, I had mentioned, after discussion with you and the rest of the board, that I was supportive of waiting until the balance of the other Title IX cases that were under investigation concluded. Those investigations have concluded, and I'm asking for clarification on behalf of the public, who I represent, when the public will receive a report outlining summary findings, so we as a district can address the deficiencies that were noted that we've, as a board, all seen and read. We need to act as a board to correct those deficiencies.
Well, first of all, again, I disagree with your characterization of what may or may not be in a privileged report. And again, I caution you that making your own characterization.
Roger,
Hold on. I'm
Okay,
talking.
okay.
It's my turn. I think it's inappropriate for you to give your characterization of confidential information. That investigation is still ongoing. We are having a closed session this evening. And whatever may or may not be disclosed subsequent to the conclusion of that investigation will be addressed accordingly by the board. I would also like to clarify and correct that at the meeting that you referenced, there was not a majority of the board that voted to release the audit. There was a majority that supported your motion to amend the agenda
That's what I
to
said.
talk about it.
Supported my motion.
To amend the agenda, not on the substance of releasing any report and the understanding, and you then withdrew your request.
Yep, I acknowledge
Okay.
that just a minute
So
ago.
just for clarification.
So to clarify, the request for the agenda item today, and I read it right off of my email to you, is that we as a board discuss taking action on the Title IX report that we reviewed and implementing corrective action. We as a board reviewed the first Title IX report from an independent third-party attorney that we hired in June of 2023. It's now November. Nothing, not a single thing has been done since we had that meeting in June. Nothing. And we owe it to the public. We owe it to teachers in this school district. We owe it to students in this school district to act. And this continues to get kicked down the road and not acted upon. And it's concerning to me.
Well, I disagree that it gets kicked down the road. We all agreed at the meeting in October that we would wait until there was the completion of the investigation, and then whatever recommendations for best practices, changes in procedural, administrative guidelines, any recommendations that the auditor may have, we would review at a future date. I mean, that's what we all agreed to. I mean, we're continuing consistent with what we had discussed. And I mean, I think we're all hopeful of having a conclusion to that process. And tonight certainly will be a step further in that direction.
So when I brought this up for the first time, Ms. Marks, it was the first time in my tenure serving on this board, she directed criticism at me. I don't know that I've ever criticized her publicly, but she stated that I was uninformed for questioning.
This isn't an opportunity. This is a motion to amend the agenda. It's not an opportunity for you to take personal attacks against other
I'm not
board
taking
members.
any
Well, you
personal
are.
attacks. I'm
And
making a
I think
statement
you're
of fact.
mischaracterizing.
Are you interrupting me, Roger?
I have, listen, if
I
I
listened to you when you spoke.
understand, I'm the president, and that role, I'm to control the decorum of the meeting. And it's inappropriate.
You interrupt me then. when I
Yes,
have
because
the
it's
floor.
inappropriate for you to make personal attacks against other
No
board
personal
members.
attacks. It's a statement of fact.
So what's your motion? Your motion is to amend the agenda to add a public discussion about Title IX
For
audit.
discussion, for the board to have a discussion around how we as a board will act upon the report that was provided to us by an independent third-party legal counsel in June of 2023 that has not been acted upon. No action has been taken since that report was shared with our board.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Storm to amend the agenda in that regard. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Mr. Tremblay. Any further discussion?
Yes, with all due respect to Mr. Storm, I think it's inappropriate to characterize what we received in prior closed sessions in any substantive way in this context because of the rules around how we must handle matters that are discussed in closed session. But setting that issue aside, I think it's inappropriate for us to add 4 action items or 4 discussion items to this agenda at this point when we have yet to receive the report that is actually part of the agenda. So I think your main concern that we need to discuss what our outside counsel has been looking into and what their findings have been is covered by the fact that we are going into closed session to receive that attorney-client privileged communication. So I would not support amending the agenda further to add additional places on it to discuss something that we have not received yet.
But yet we have received the report in June that outlined very serious issues and gaps in how our administration handled a
That's just,
particular.
Mr. Storm, you're disclosing things. First of all, you're inaccurately
I can
characterizing.
speak freely. This is.
No,
a
you
public
can't speak
forum.
freely about what is allegedly included in an attorney-client privilege document
So we're
and
let's-
discussed in closed
let's-
session, and the disclosure of that is a statutory misdemeanor.
let's-
And you cannot do that,
let's release
and it's
the
a
report to the public,
mischaracterization.
Roger.
It's a mischaracterization of
Why don't we
what's
release the
included
report
in,
to the public?
because it's privileged, and we've already
Why is
discussed.
it privileged?
Because it's an attorney-client
We as
privilege
a board have the
communication.
right to waive attorney-client privilege?
And we've not done that.
Do we?
Yeah, we do.
We sure do. I hope
Right.
everybody in the public heard him.
Yeah.
We have the ability as a board to waive attorney-client privilege. So why are we holding it back from
Well,
the
that's-
public, Roger?
Well,
If there's
the
nothing
motion,
in it.
the motion before the board is to add this to the agenda. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of amending the agenda to
Roll
add
call
the,
vote, please.
add the item requested by Mr. Storm?
I'm requesting a roll call vote.
vote, please. Ms. Ackermite.
Okay, Mr. Storm,
I vote in favor of the motion.
Dr. Krebs. No. Ms. Reed,
No?
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
No.
Mr. Trombley,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
No. All right, the motion fails 3-4. All those in favor of the agenda as presented signify by aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
All right, that passes 4-3.
There were other items that I had identified here, Roger, that I've communicated with you about to be added to the agenda.
Well, we've already approved the agenda, so we can take those up at a future date. We have a lot of people here that have come here to address and talk about the issues on the agenda.
It has
If
to do
there's-
with
if there's-
district security, Roger.
If there's any further items that you want to address, we can raise it in the executive committee at the next meeting. All right, so at this point in time, I would like to invite Oakland County Circuit Court Judge Michael Warren, who has graced us with his presence here this evening. Judge Warren is one of the co-founders of Patriot Week, is also very involved in the Patriot Week Foundation, and in conjunction with the Oakland University Center for Civic Engagement, is moving forward with a summit that is to be held next spring at Oakland University. That's going to be around the topic of civics and history. And Judge Warren is here this evening to address the summit and to provide information that I think will be a very great benefit to our students who may be interested in attending that summit. And Judge Warren, we appreciate you taking time out of your time this evening to be here and provide the information to the board. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to address the board. I know that you have a busy agenda and lots of folks here in the audience, so I'll try not to take too much time. But I wanted to give you a context of what we're trying to do and hopefully gain your support for it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to establish new government, laying its foundation such principles and organizing its powers such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Those words from the Declaration of Independence were revolutionary in 1776, and they remain revolutionary today. And despite the controversy about America and our role on the world stage, and boy, have we been controversial on the world stage, we remain a beacon of hope, a torch of liberty for billions of people across the world. Most people in the world live in countries where they wish their country was more like ours. Some people are so frustrated with their country, they'd rather just leave and come live here. We all know about that immigration debate. And some people hate us so much, they're willing to blow themselves up just to hurt our innocent civilians. Whether they love us or hate us, they're all motivated by those founding first principles articulated in the Declaration of Independence and embedded in our Constitution. The rule of law, unalienable rights, limited government, the social compact, equality, and the right to alter or abolish an oppressive government. That's what makes America, America. As fun it is to watch the Swifties, or as fun as it is, at least this season, to watch the Detroit Lions, That's not what makes America America. It's our founding first principles, articulated in the Declaration of Independence and embedded in our Constitution. And I know this district is an exception. You take that responsibility of civics and history very seriously. You've been a supporter of Patriot Week for many years, and we're very grateful for that. But we do have a crisis in our country where students aren't receiving the education that they need in connection with civics and history. And so many years ago, my then 10-year-old daughter pounded on the table and demanded a new celebration for America. And that was the birth of Patriot Week. And we've been going strong for 14 years. I want to emphasize that Patriot Week is nonpartisan. We have a 501c3 status that we've been endorsed by over 15 states. We have been endorsed by the U.S. Senate unanimously 5 years going, with Senator Gary Peters from the Democrats and Senator John Kennedy from the Republicans co-sponsoring that U.S. Senate resolution. And the fact that the U.S. Senate can agree on anything unanimously nowadays is quite a feat. So we're very thankful for and have great gratitude in connection with that. This year we did something, it was a new novel approach where we had a panel discussion for each. So Patriot Week goes from 9/17, the anniversary of the terrorist attacks, to 9/11, the anniversary of terrorist attacks, to 9/17, the anniversary of the signing of the Constitution, which you know is Constitution Day. And every day we celebrate our founding first principles, key documents and speeches, founding fathers, and other great patriots and flags from history. And this year our novel approach was we had a panel discussion anchored by people on different sides of the political aisle about how to better fulfill our founding first principles. And we had 7 days, but 8 sessions, and we recorded those with the idea that we would then convene a student summit, education civic summit in the spring, where students would be able to have the opportunity to learn about what was discussed at those panel discussions, either look at the videos or summaries of the videos, have in-depth discussions with their instructors, and then convene for a summit in the spring where they would come armed with specific policy proposals that they thought would help improve our country by better fulfilling our founding first principles. We know that we've had a lot of challenges with living up to our promises. We acknowledge that we're not perfect or infallible, and that there's always room for improvement. And so the idea is to have the students gather so that they'll be, first off, they'll come and think about these things ahead of time. They'll be able to present their specific policy proposals and then kind of have like a mini legislative session / constitutional convention where they thrash out amongst each other what are the ones they think should be adopted by the summit. And then we have, believe it or not, a former senior vice president of Comcast who's in charge of governmental relations, who has agreed to help the students lobby whatever they adopt to actually go to the policymakers. It might be a board of education. It might be the state board of education, which I'm a former member of. It might be the legislature. It might be a county commissioner or commission, all kinds of options, because that's going to be up to the students. As was noted before, this is a joint venture between the Patriot Week Foundation as well as with the Center for Civic Engagement from Oakland University. They helped co-host all of the panel discussions that we had. Professor David Dulio there is the chairman of that. And so we kind of teamed up to do this. And Oakland University has offered to host it, although we are very open to having it held at other places, depending on which school districts get involved. I would love to have the Brighton schools get involved. I think that you would be the perfect fit for this initiative, that you have a great staff that's dedicated to these kinds of initiatives, great student body. And I know the community pretty well, and I know that the community is very supportive of these kinds of things. And I think that we could really create a model for civic engagement, deep learning for students, an experience, which is an experiment, to have a deeper learning, but also the opportunity to actually affect something by having policy proposals which may be implemented and really hopefully change the world and create a model for not just Michigan, but across the country. So that's, you have to say I'm audacious, but we have troubling times and we need that kind of effort to make change. So that's the proposal. We have an education consultant who's a AP government U.S. history and U.S. history teacher who would be willing to team up with your teachers to help them go through this process. We are happy to feed the students, pay for transportation. You know, you have a partner that is willing to go above and beyond to make sure this is a great experience for your students. We've chosen April 19th, which is the anniversary of the Shot Heard Run World, Lexington Concord. Maybe I should have asked the kids if they could tell us what that was. But we figured that was you avoid all the AP tests and kind of the end of the year and still have time to be able to lobby the legislature. So we've kind of timed it with that in mind. And the interaction between the students and our education consultant, we were thinking we could kick off in January, right after the holidays, get it started. You'd have 3.5 months to dig into this and have a great experience. And I think I hit all the, I think some of the stuff was circulated already, so I'll just stand for questions if there's any questions, or I can let you get on with your meeting.
Judge, thank you for coming tonight. How many representatives from each district would you be looking for to attend?
So overall, we would like to have between 200 and 300 students, and we don't care if they come from all one district or from a variety of districts. And to be very transparent about this, the only other district that I've approached that was very excited about this, only other district, and they were very excited about it, is the Birmingham schools in Oakland County. So my desire would be Brighton, Birmingham, got the 2 B schools, unite together districts, have split the kids half and half, and that would be a great model for us to start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Judge Warren, thank you very much for coming and presenting. Appreciate your time tonight. Very valuable, and appreciate your hard work for almost 2 decades, right, on this front.
Well, 14 years on Patriot Week, and I've been on the bench about 20 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Judge Warren, thank you again for
Thank you.
being here this evening. We really appreciate the information, and we will certainly support this initiative as much as we can and encourage our students to be active participants, because I definitely think it will be a very rewarding experience for them.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That's awesome. Have a great night.
Thank you.
God bless you, and God bless America.
God bless you too.
All right. So we're on to the superintendent report. I'm going to bring forward Sage Bissett. It's going to be our first person.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for having me again. This is a really cool experience for me, so thank you very much. I'm Sage. I'm just here to talk about all things BHS that's going on at the high school right now. So first, executive board just finished planning and putting together homecoming, and it went really well. I don't know if you guys went out to the parade, but that was really cool to see everybody come together and all of the student councils make their floats. They're just looking for ways to get involved in our community as well. Also, our senior student council has had their senior meeting, which is pretty much involving all of our seniors and giving them all the information they need for upcoming graduation or things that they can get involved in. We also took our class photo, which took a couple of tries, but we got a good one, hopefully. And we are currently in the process of making satirical etiquette videos for our school to play in the announcements, just to kind of keep good behavior throughout BHS. And then finally, we're working on our senior book, class gift, and teacher letters for graduation students. A big thing that's going on right now is our Gleaners fundraiser for NHS. It will be talked about more in the next slide, but they're also generating ideas for Senior Survivor, which happens towards the end of the year. And other committees like teacher focus groups, BHS Brilliance, which involves the downtown, and the Environmental Committee, which is led by Mr. Rio, our teacher, which they go around at the end of the day recycling for all of the teachers. We're also working with all the other committees to kind of start up projects that they can do to get involved in our community. One of the big things was Gleaners, which we're working on. And as of today, sometime, we have $4,492. And the goal this year is to raise $15,000. It has been a little tricky this year with the new fundraising guidelines. So we've been really trying to spread the word and get as many people involved and to donate as possible. Along with our donations, we also have some students going to the food bank every Saturday from 7 to 9 a.m. And the link below is so that you can possibly donate would be great. I shared it with you, so maybe if you could help us get it out, that would be awesome. Lastly, our leadership report, our final numbers in, and we were able to raise $70,000 for Pink Week this year. So really big thank you to everybody. Thank you. It was really just an amazing experience, and we're hopefully able to present the big check to them sometime in January, so that's coming. And then we had our homecoming assembly, which was really smooth, and we got a lot of positive feedback from it. And these are some pictures from our dance, so that was really cool. And then upcoming, we are starting to think about Operation Christmas Wishes, which is where we raise money to get Christmas presents for kids K through 3rd grade at Ford Early Learning Center in Ypsilanti. And we are fundraising from 11/23 to 12/8. And some fundraising opportunities to possibly come or that are in the works is a babysitting night. So for any teachers who have kids, we're possibly gonna have a night where you can drop your kids off and get some shopping done for the holidays. And then we also have bake sales, euchre tournament, Pigs with Santa, and a bunch of other things. And then our delivery date is 12/15, so we'll definitely have a video coming out with how that goes. And other than that, we have the holiday assembly that we're also planning for, and we're starting our annual hand clap performance. So that's kind of all that's been going on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sage. Yeah, appreciate the updates.
Okay, next up, we have two shining stars this evening, and we're going to bring forward Principal Johnson is going to do our first and talk about the mountain bike team.
Mrs. Marks actually asked
Oh,
me
Ms.
to
Marks.
also bring the team, so she
Oh.
has a handwritten statement that it's up to you if you want to read it. I think you should. And then I'll kick in with my little 2 cents.
So tonight, Brighton Area Schools would like to honor the BHS Mountain Biking Co-ed Club team. This team was started 12 years ago by a student, CJ Brish. CJ won the individual state championship the very first year. And following that inaugural year, the club began to grow in both numbers of participants and their success. When parent and coach TJ Terrell took the helm several years ago, the team really started to expand. Under his leadership, the number of female riders increased and a developmental program for younger riders blossomed. This year, the Brighton High School mountain biking team won its 10th straight high school state championship. Dynasty seems an appropriate word in this case, a legacy of fitness, participation, and success started by a single student. This club team is an amazing example of the kind of support Brighton area school families and the district provide to students, and a testament to the commitment and hard work of more than a decade of student athletes. Coach Giles, the many parent, family volunteers, and all of the team riders over the past 10 years are recognized tonight. We have in attendance the current coach and some of the student athletes to represent the mountain biking team. Congratulations to one of Brighton's most successful clubs or teams in our district's very decorated history. And if you want to.
I do. It started with one single kid walked into my office one day, goes, I want to start a mountain biking team. I said, it's all yours. And now it's 10 straight high school state championships. Our first graders, males, females, all the way up and down, hundreds of athletes and dozens and hundreds of parent coaches that come out and ride with the kids. So it's a true family event. Your parents can actually ride with your kids as coaches. So it's a really, really sweet program. I brought 4 of the trophies. They also have the coolest state championship trophies. Young lady, hold up the one you got. Hold it up nice and high. It's the coolest trophy you could ever get. This is Coach Giles. He took over for TJ Tyrell, and he has taken this team and made it flourish. So no credit. It's all of these guys. Coach Giles.
Oh, yeah, don't point any credit at me. Gavin, like to the school board, I'd like to publicly thank the support of an incredible community. As a coach taking over for Coach Tyrell, it's an easy job. We have great parents. We have a great school. I love the fact that we don't have to deal with the politics. Thank you for dealing with that on your side. We just basically know that we all want to come together, do great by the kids. From a coaching standpoint, we have an incredible level of commitment from our parent coaches, many of whom are represented here today, that really make my job possible and easy. But most importantly, the kids who are here representing the team today, just a constant desire to improve, do better by themselves, and make Brighton proud. So go Dogs. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Here you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Coach. Good job.
Congratulations.
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 Good job. Good job.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Congratulations.
Good job, man.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Good job.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Congratulations. Good job, man. You do too, huh? What school do you go
Take a
to?
picture?
All right, man.
Way to go, buddy. Congratulations. Good work.
That's okay.
Ready here? All right, thank you all. Okay, our second shining star this evening is not able to be with us this evening, but I want to read a statement from our counseling department regarding one of our National Merit Scholarship honoree, Kyle Fick. So this is from Counselor Jody Petit. A total of approximately 50,000 students across the United States take the PSAT, and they receive recognition for the National Merit Scholarship Program. In early September, over 16,000 of the 50,000 high scorers were notified that they had qualified as semifinalists. Semifinalists are the highest scoring entrants in each state. Kyle Fick, is a Brighton High School senior, has received this honor. Kyle has a GPA of 4.25, and he loves his math and science classes. He wants to pursue a computer science degree at Princeton or University of Michigan in hopes of going into research as a professor or find his dream job in the industry. So let's have a big congratulations to Kyle Fick as our National Merit Semifinalist. Okay, feel free to stay if you'd like, but the next up, we are going to be having our audit report. So we're going to get our audit set up now. Thanks, everybody.
Coming, everybody.
They didn't want to stay.
I know.
Okay.
right. Want to do this one here? This one? All right, you just force it tap.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Obviously, we're the audit firm, Maynard Casterison. We performed an audit for the district as of June 30, 2023. You have 4 different documents in front of you. The main one, the audit, being the bound copy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because most of the highlights are in the handout that you have in front of you, the PowerPoint slide deck. But you also have 2 additional letters that I'll go over at the end of the slide presentation as well. Going to, it looks like that's the 4th slide that you would have, just gives you a summary of where we were on the audit results. So I like to give a little bit of thanks to the business office. We don't have journal entries. We don't have adjustments when it comes to the audit year after year out here. You've had really, really fine individuals in place that take care of the financing of the district. And I believe that's going to continue in Dave Jones in his new role as Vice Superintendent of Finance as well. So we've had a very, very successful audit when it comes to the board's receiving good information on a month in and month out. And that comes through on the audit when we don't have any what we would call findings related to material weaknesses or significant deficiencies to present to you. When it comes to the opinion that we issued on the financial statements, you can see that in that middle section. We did issue what we would call an unmodified opinion. That does cover both the financial statement side of the audit. That's the basic financials, the general fund, your special revenue funds, your debt service, and your capital project fund. We also issue an opinion on your federal funding and the major programs that we test when it comes to your federal funding. This year, we tested the ESSER program. A lot of that is made up of wages. You do have some non-payroll related activity in that as well. But obviously, you know that's been a major source of revenue coming in with expenses that go against that over the past couple of years. That funding is going to go away at the end of the 2024 year. So the additional funding you have in place to really spend that down, you'll see that really going away over the next year. But as with the shared services, it has allowed the district to continue to increase your overall fund balance. So the next couple of slides I'm going to go over, you will see the impact of the revenue, the additional revenue that you've got, and some of those unique situations for Brighton that have helped really boost that fund balance. Before I get into that, though, I do want to touch base on that GASB 96 implementation, so you just don't think I went over that. Last year, for the 2022 audit, we had to consider a new GASB standard called GASB 87, which had to do with leases. So most schools, that didn't impact a whole lot. But if you had entered into any long-term lease agreements, a lot of governmental entities that could have been a building lease might have put you into a situation where we have to record a long-term liability on those lease agreements, those future payments, and a right to use asset. This year, it was the kind of sister standard to that, and the fact that we're looking at GASB 96, which deals with SBITAs. That's the short-term way of saying subscription-based IT arrangements. So you can think of that as like IT software, some special education software, curriculum, stuff like that would have qualified under SBITAs if certain thresholds were met and certain like ability to manage that software and make it different than the base software. So you had to be able to manipulate it in a way outside of just the standard out of the box software. And I mean, if you were just getting a digital book, that wouldn't qualify as a SBITA. But if you were getting accounting software that you can go in and tweak to your like own preferences, that would count. So you had to be able to make modifications that were personalized to the organization. We did look at all those agreements. they were either short-term or there was nothing material to the point where we would show that as a right to use that submitted arrangement and a long-term liability related to those arrangements out there. The next couple of slides that I'm going to go over, we've included them for a number of years, and it really just tells a story of where Brighton is today versus where it was back during that 2010, 2011, when we saw kind of a trend of decrease in enrollment and fund balance that was getting concerning. We were in a deficit elimination plan for a number of years, and we were able to get out of that during, I believe, the 2015 year and continued that upwards trend in overall fund balance. So you can see at the low point, we're around 6,200 students, and with the shared services program, have been able to increase that to that 9,553 for the 2023 year. With that, you can see the trend of fund balance within your general fund. So we had a number of years we had gotten into a negative fund balance within your general fund, all the way up to that $8.5 million deficit. And we're now looking at a $16 million surplus fund balance within the general fund. So obviously the program continues to do wonders for the school and act as a very nice cost center or revenue center for the organization. The next slide is a comparative of where you are at your full accrual or statement of net position. This is your government-wide financial statements. And I make that specification because when you're looking at your monthly financials, you're typically looking at what we would call the fund level financial statements or under the modified accrual. When we look at the statement of net position, the statement of activities, we're looking at what we would call full accrual, where all of your long-term assets and all of your long-term liabilities are brought to the face of the financial statements. The biggest ones being your fixed assets, your buildings, your equipment. Your long-term debt is then recognized as a long-term liability. That pension and OPEB liability that we talk about every year, and there's a little bit of a story there this year as well. Those are all presented on your statement of net position as assets and liabilities. When you take a look at your overall assets, you can see that third line down, you're at $162 million. Very, very consistent with where you were last year, just under $162 million. But you can see the shift of where those assets are being identified. Last year, we had $63 million in current assets and current and other assets. Most of that's going to be your cash investments, your intergovernmental receivables, your July and August state aid that hadn't come in yet as of June 30. That's what makes up most of that $52 million as of June 30, 2023. That's down from the 63 last year. And the correlation there is that you can see the almost exact increase on your capital assets net of depreciation. So we know we were wrapping up bond projects, continuing to spend dollars on some of the construction that was going on. So most of that financial assets that were in investments in cash were converted into buildings as those projects continued. So that's why you see that number being pretty much similar or exactly the same almost, but the mix being a little bit different. When you look at your non-current liabilities, you can see that top number, $115,159,000. That's down from 131. That's your long-term debt. Mostly general obligation bonds. It does include another note payable and some compensated absences, but that number is down quite a bit. Most of that has to do with the 2020 bond payment. It's about $13 million this year. So you can see that overall your long-term liabilities were down about $16 million. The net pension and net OPEB liabilities, you can see that in that $174 million and that $9.6 million number. I just want to highlight that number because we keep thinking we're going to get to a point where that MIPSR's plan is starting to right itself in the way where we're making progress, we're paying down the liability at the full MIPSR's plan statewide level for all schools. And then we're not going to see these big swings back into a larger liability. We did see that this year. And the MIPSR's plan, it includes both the pension and the OPEB or the healthcare piece of it. the plan date is September 30, 2022. And that's what we use for the purposes of our financial statements, because that's the last time they had an audit done on the MIPSR's plan. So that's the most recent information that we can use. If we look at where we're at September 30, 2023, from a market, stock market standpoint, just where things are, we're in a much better situation today than we were back in September 30, 2022. So these liabilities are going up because when you think back to September 30, 2022, we're looking at the actuarially stated liabilities that are out there for the MIPSR's plan. Those aren't going down, they're going up as well. But as of September 30, the market really was in the tanks as far as where we've seen it the last few years. And that made the financial assets that was offsetting the liability of those plans also going down, creating a larger gap in that unfunded portion on the MIPSR's plan. So you're seeing that reflected here within that overall liability for net pension and net OPEB as of June 30, 2023. Overall, we did see a positive impact on your net position, though. I know they're negative numbers, but if you take the net pension and net OPEB out of that, you're looking at positive net position, but you're still in a better situation today than you were as of June 30, 2022, going from the 135 deficit to that 120 deficit. And again, this is all at the full accrual level. It's not the fund level statements you look at month in and month out, and that whole deficit is really all due to that pension and OPEB situation.
Do you want us to hold questions until the end?
No.
Can you clarify what you mean by the full accrual?
Yep, full accrual. So when you look at your monthly financial statements for your general fund, your debt service fund, your capital project fund, your special revenue fund, that accounting is what we would call the modified accrual accounting. And it's can also be referred to as like the budgetary basis. You're looking at it basically in a year. Like, what are you going to spend as expenditures over that year? You're budgeting based on
by month.
You'll see it by month, but I'm just saying your overall expenditures are being shown that that's what your plan was for overall the year to spend your money down. So when you do your budgets, you're doing it on like an annualized basis on how you plan on spending that money over the next year. The full accrual takes you more towards normal accounting where you're not looking at just what your expenditures are going to be. You are looking at all of your long-term liabilities and long-term assets. So at your fund level, you're not going to see any building assets on your books. You're not going to see any long-term debt. But at the full accrual level, you're going to bring those to the face of the financial statements. They would have been expensed at the fund level. And then if it was a long-term liability and you had capital assets of, say, $12 million, you would have had capital outlay expenditures of $12 million within the current year. At the government-wide level, we would remove that expenditure and we would bring that to an asset on the face of your statement of net position. Same thing with debt. So you'd have proceeds related to long-term debt at the fund level, and then you would bring that on as a liability at the full accrual or government-wide statement of net position. That's the difference. I mean, the main difference. And you can see that a little bit when you can see it very clearly when you get to the next page, because you can see where you are in total assets and liabilities. So we no longer have a net deficit like you had at your statement of net position, because we're removing those long-term liabilities and those fixed assets, and you're just looking at where you were on the modified accrual basis of accounting. And that's where we're just looking at our assets that aren't long-term, like your capital assets, your liabilities that aren't long-term, like your long-term debt, and leaving you with that fund balance in your general fund of $16 million. So I don't know if that clarifies exactly, but that's what we're looking at. Some of the numbers here, though, are similar to what we talked about at your statement of net position. You can see going all the way across, your total assets are $52 million. That does relate to a lot of what we saw at the statement net position. We just don't see those long-term assets. Most of those assets are in your general fund, $33.9 million. $16 million of that is your cash and investments, and another $17 million of that relates to your state aid and other governmental receivables as of June 30. Your 2019 capital project fund, you're at about $10 million in investments still out there on that bond. That's down quite a bit. We were about $30 million in investments last year. And total liabilities in that center line all the way across are about $20 million, and they were about $18 million last year. A little bit of an increase there, and the main reason for that increase has to do with your shared service program. So we've went over the cap on what you could add in shared service the last couple of years, and all that means is the state aid that they calculated, you weren't eligible to keep all of it. You could only keep the state aid up to the cap amount. And we have about $4 million that's out there as amounts owed back to the state of Michigan that will be reconciled in future years. The state's just kind of slow at taking care of that piece. But overall, you can see fund balances across all of your funds. General fund, $16 million. Capital project fund, that's your bond project, still have about $7.9 million left. Your 2020 refunding, that's a debt service fund. You receive property tax revenue and you pay your long-term debt with those property tax proceeds, $1.4 million in fund balance. And your non-major funds, this makes up your special revenue. You've got food service, community ed, school student activity accounts are within that. You have multiple debt service funds also within that non-major fund, and you have another capital project fund that's not related to a bond issuance that's within that non-major fund as well. Leaving you with total fund balance, that bottom right-hand corner number, $31 million. That's down from $46 million last year, but that's as expected. I mean, typically you want to see that number going up, but since you had a bond project going on, there's no way for that number to go anyway but down. So as you spent about $20 million down on that bond during the current year, you can see we had a decrease in fund balance down to that $31.4 million. This is summarized as well. It does provide you a picture, again, at the fund level, modified accrual of where you were from revenue and expenses. Your right-hand column is all of the revenues of $143 million, offset by $158,000 in expenses for a excess or a usage of $14.8 million. Again, normally you want to see that number being positive, but the reason why you're seeing that negative there this year is because of that $19 million spend down within that 2019 capital projects fund. So you can see that in that second column. So again, going through the bond process, building, using that to build capital outlay, buildings, things like that. Your general fund had $112 million in revenue. That was up quite a bit. A couple of reasons for that. Obviously, we're adding pupils. We're up all the way to about 9,500 students compared to 8,700 last year. So shared services is really helping that. You guys are continuing to increase your pupil membership. We also had a pretty significant increase in state aid foundation allowance during the current year from around that $8,700 amount as well, all the way up to $9,150. And that's going up to, I think, $9,460 for this current year as well. So we've seen a couple of years now of increasing state foundation allowance, which is really allowing schools to see a benefit overall in revenue, because there was a number of years where we really didn't see a whole lot of increases in the foundation allowance. But you're getting a little bit of a compounding there by adding students through your program, and then seeing an additional boost by the increase in the foundation allowance. So we were able to add $3.2 million to your general fund balance, taking you from that just under $13 million up to $16.2 million. Next one, just a KPI for you. There's a lot of debate on what the right number from a percentage standpoint on fund balance, what you should be looking for. You see a lot of schools. This isn't obviously the full state. It's just a snippet of a few. But you see a lot of schools approaching that 20%, some going over 20% from their fund balance as a percentage of general fund expenditures. We've been around 14 or 15% the last couple of years here at Brighton. That's a healthy spot, especially with where we were and where you want to be. You don't really want that number to get too high anyways. I mean, if you let that number get too high, you're really going to face the questions of why do you have such a high fund balance? And 15%, it's right where, when I say MSBO, I mean the Michigan School of Business Officials. They always used to say somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% was an ideal spot for fund balance. Over the last couple of years with the increased COVID funding, that fund balance is increasing. So their recommendation is closer to that 15 to 18% at this point, which is right where Brighton area schools is. I don't know that you want to necessarily compare yourself to other schools. It's kind of an arbitrary number in the big grand scheme of things, but it's here to show you that 15% is a pretty healthy spot. It's in line with where you want to be. Might be a little bit under statewide, but there's no issue with that 14% number. Highlights within the footnotes of the financial statements, just going to go over three of the bigger ones. We've already talked about them to some extent, but you can see the fixed assets, your capital assets. We did add about $21 million in fixed assets during the year. We also depreciated some of those assets that are on the books by about $9 million, and that's where you get roughly $11, $12 million increase in your capital assets from last year to this year. Long-term debt, we have about $114 million in outstanding bonds payable. So that's your general obligation. Again, that's down about $15, $16 million from where you were last year. And most of that comes from the large payment on the 2020 issuance, about $13 million. And I know we talked about the pension and the OPEB already a little bit. When you're looking at that, it gives you a little bit of a picture of what the issue is. We're looking at the unfunded portion that I'm referencing within that statewide pension liability and that statewide OPEB liability. So that unfunded portion increased statewide by just under $14 billion. We're only looking at Brighton's proportionate share or their percentage, and that still increased $65 million year over year. Much smaller issue when it comes to the OPEB side of things, but you can see they still had a $591 million increase in that unfunded portion of that liability, but that only comes to about a $2.6 million increase on Brighton's share of that increase. Budget to actual, going over your general fund, just giving you a quick picture of where you were to start the year, what you thought the budget was, planned on adding about $3.2 million, came around at the end of the year, final budget projected to add $1.1 million, budgeting revenues of around $113 million and expenses of $111 million. When you look at where you came in overall on an actual side of things, if you look at the number, I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, but you had a positive variance of $2.1 million. You want to be in a positive variance situation. If you end up spending more than what you, if you come in less than what you budgeted to add to fund balance, that would be a budgetary violation in state law. So you are in a healthy spot where you added $2 million more than you projected on your final budget. Most of that came in the way of expenditures, budgeted for 111 expenditures and came in at $108 million. But again, taking you from that $13 million up to that $16.2 million to end the year in the general fund. As I mentioned, you were subject to what we would call a single audit or a compliance audit under uniform guidance. This comes into play once you receive more than $750,000 in federal funding. There was a number of years where Brighton didn't have enough federal funding to get over that threshold. You have a couple of programs now that are over that. Your your child nutrition or food service cluster, that was at about $940,000 in the current year. Didn't have to look at that one. We instead chose to look at the ESSER dollars. That's a higher risk program as identified by the standards, so we did have to look at that. And you had about $5.7 million in total federal funding. Most of that, 4.7 of that, was in the way of ESSER. Again, a lot of that has to do with wage related. So when you're looking at that, it's easy to kind of fall within the compliance side of things when you're using it on wages. But we did look at the processes that were in place and comparing that to the budgets that were submitted to MDE. And there were no issues when it came to the major program that was the Education Stabilization Fund. The rest of this page, I also like to point out, because it does identify whether or not there would have been any issues within that program. If there were material weaknesses, we had items that were large dollar amounts that were wrong. We would have to identify that as material weakness. Did not identify that. No significant deficiencies. Those are less severe than a material weakness, but again, no significant deficiencies matters identified either, and no other items that were required to be reported under 2 CFR, which is the Uniform Guidance Guidelines. The last couple of things I have for you, they're the letters that were handed out. One of them is required communication, and the other one I'll go over, but the state of Michigan is really wanting it disclosed within a management letter if you had the situation that brightens in. Not a big deal. A lot of schools find them in, but I'll go over that in a minute. The 3-page letter that you have in front of you is what we call the governance letter. In a lot of ways, it's an exit engagement letter. So if anything came up during the audit that we needed to disclose to you, it'd have to be within this letter. The first page talks about some of the significant estimates that happened during the year. We've already talked about the pension and OPEB piece. Those are very clearly estimates based on actuarial information. We can't really change those numbers at all, but they fluctuate enough that there's no solid foundation necessarily to say those numbers are exact. They're based on actuarial information. Compensated absences, again, we base that based on PTO that's unused at the end of the year. So we are estimating what that liability would be for the organization. Same with the amounts on the capital assets, the lives of the capital assets. We did not encounter difficulties performing the audit. We had no corrected or uncorrected misstatements, no disagreements with management, and we did receive a management representation letter, which is a laundry list basically saying where management represents that they provided us everything we needed to complete the audit. The other letter is the single page one. I would say the majority of districts are finding themselves in this situation. It's not really a bad situation. What happened was we received a lot of free and reduced lunch revenue during the COVID years. And now we're also seeing state come in, a little bit different source of revenue, now providing the opportunity for free and reduced lunches as well. What has happened as a result of that is we're seeing an increase in revenue within the food service funds without a significant increase in expenses. And when that happens, we're obviously adding to our fund balance. When it comes to the special revenue fund, in particular here, the food service fund, we're only allowed to have 3 months of expenditures within our fund balance. So when we get over that threshold, the state is going to say we have too much fund balance because a school food service fund isn't a revenue generator for the district. It's there to serve the students, and they don't want to see that number get large at the, sacrifice of providing service to the kids. A lot of districts fell into this situation because of circumstances that have never been seen before, and that's why we see that. Last year, if there was an excess food service fund balance, the state of Michigan wanted to see that as a significant deficiency finding within the financials. They received so many of those findings that they said, we don't want to see that anymore. And that's why they've shifted to wanting to see it in a management letter instead, because they have to look at all of those findings when they come up and address the significance or what happened with them. They basically didn't have the capacity and didn't want to go through all of those excess food service fund balances. So that's why it's showing up in a management letter now instead of a finding related to the audit. But I'm happy to answer questions for anyone if you have any.
I have just a quick question regarding the pension liability.
Yep.
Can you clarify how the market affects the ebb and flow of the liability that's recorded on our financial statement?
Sure can. I wasn't going to open this because it really gets a little more in the weeds. But if you turn to page 43 and 44 within the bound copy, you can see exactly how that calculation is being done. So again, we're looking at the state retirement plan, pension plan, the state healthcare OPEB plan. And when you look at that table that first table at the top of page 43, you can see year over year the comparison of where we were last year to where we were this year within that pension plan. So the pension plan is on your left, and the bottom right-hand corner is the OPEB plan. The total actuarially determined liability for those plans are $95 billion. So when you look at all of the retirement benefits that are going to be projected to be paid out, they're talking about $95 billion. Last year, that number was $86 billion. When you look at the market fluctuations, how they're investing it, again, they're not investing it risky. Governments aren't allowed to really invest that risky, but even that can work into your disadvantage if you're not ever going to take the benefit of those like market gains. But here we did see some overall market, even on those relatively safe areas of investment. At the end of September 30, 2022, you can see we only had assets or investments, if you will, of $58 billion. So you had two things going on here. The actuarially determined liability is going up, and the assets on hand or the financial investments of the plan are going down. Those two things made that net pension liability, that unfunded portion, go up. And this isn't unique to Brighton. It's every single school that's in the MIPSR's plan, which is all public schools, is seeing this exact same situation impact their school. So we went from an unfunded liability of $23 billion last year up to $37 billion. Your percentage stayed basically the same, less than 0.5%, 0.46% compared to, 0.46274 compared to 0.46027. So almost the same percentage. And that's why you see about a $64 million increase in your proportionate share or your percentage of that outstanding liability, if that makes sense.
It does. And I guess I'm just wondering where do these values come from?
It's a state plan. So
but I mean, you as an auditor pull them from the state of Michigan?
We do.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you
Yep.
look at our.
Yeah, those numbers that you're looking at right there, exact same numbers for every school.
Okay.
Except for that bottom number, that 174 million. That's your number.
And the bottom number for our district is established by you working with our administration?
No, that's the number established by the MIPSR's plan as well.
Okay.
Yep.
But
You can go, yep.
I guess what defines the calculation for our district liability? Is what I'm
Payroll.
getting at.
Submitted payroll to ORS.
So it is payroll.
Yep, it is. Yep. So, I mean, that's all information out there that if you so chose to do, you could go out to the ORS website and you could see the tables and that information right there. The district's share of that pension liability is all out within those tables. So we're not coming up with that number. That number is.
Do you happen to know, and if you don't, I can work with you offline, what percentage of the liability is tied to district employees in our actual district versus shared service employees who are part of the district but work outside of right in city limits.
I'd have to like look into that actual number to see how that's coming in, but they're basing that number, and there are what we would call required supplementary information. They're basing their numbers off of, if you turn to page 53, 54, you can see covered payroll that's being submitted. So we'd have to go in there and look at the breakout of that $44.5 million in employee covered payroll to see what the breakout of that number would be. But that's how they're calculating their share, your share of that liability. So.
I've got a question, and I don't know if this is a question more for our audit team or for the administration. But first, I did want to thank everybody that was involved in this. I want to thank the auditors for continuing to do a wonderful job with this, and thank our business office for their continued excellent work. It's great to go through this and not find any material issues in our financials and in the work of our business office. So thank you to the 22-23 fiscal year business office and our current business office for getting us through another audit with some excellent results. On the food service fund balance, your recommendation was that we follow an approved spend down plan.
Yep. So those are, yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's really, there are approved listings out there that you can spend on for equipment that you don't need to put a official spend down plan with the state of Michigan. But by and large, when it comes to spend down plans, you're not buying typical day-to-day stuff to get back down into an acceptable range. So often you're working with the state of Michigan to say, I'm going to buy this, and this, and getting that approved as part of that spend down plan. Some schools have changed the number of individuals that have been working within their cafeteria. Maybe they're getting the kids through the lines quicker, more efficiently, that sort of thing. Maybe they have more supervision on site. Some are using it to increase food quality. That's going to be more expensive to spend that down. But most are probably trying to find big chunks of capital equipment to purchase that then reduce that. But at some point, you don't need more equipment. You don't need to spend just to spend. And that's not financially prudent either. So you get into that situation of, well, what do we do now? And I don't know if they're going to end up changing the regulations on that, because it's a really small number, that 3 months worth of expenditures that they allow you to have without being identified as high risk, or sorry, not high risk, excess fund balance. So we'll see where that goes, because all we're getting is more funding into the food service program, not less. And unless you're just choosing to increase expenses left and right just to reduce that, you might be in the situation for a little while. 2022, if memory serves me right, I think we added about $1 million to the food service fund balance. This year we didn't. I think we actually, we could go to the number, but I think we used about $200,000. So we're going back into the right direction as far as trying to get closer to the max fund balance number. And I don't have that off the top of my head. So you can do a rough calc of about 3 months or 25% to get to that number, if you will. So there's not a easy answer on how to get to that. And that's why you're seeing so many schools have this included in the management letter, and why the state saw so many findings last year with that excess fund balance situation.
My question for the administration then is,
sorry.
what plans do we have to address this?
We've already started, so the food, I'm sorry. So that has already started. The food service program has started purchasing capital equipment at the beginning of the school year. And I've just looked up, we've already spent $280,000 on capital items. And then I'm also working with Richard. We've met a few times and we've got a plan. We're going to look at the numbers for this year and work out a plan on how to spend that. So we've already started that.
Thank you.
I've got a question in regards to that, back to, is that strictly, and maybe you don't know this, maybe you do, is that strictly food equipment for the kitchen, or does that entail, reconfigurations for smoother operations? Or does it, could it be, different types of flooring, or could it be different types of, RP panels on the walls or something of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, you would have to go through MDE, and ultimately they would be the decision maker on what they would say is approved or not. But I've seen, some level of renovation work done in some of these cafeterias that they've used to really spend down some of that dollars as well. So it's not really all that restrictive, but it's going to be specific, hopefully, to the school lunch program, not necessarily the district as a whole.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
On the, I always ask every year on this net pension liability. If I recall correctly, in 2020 it was 85 million, and now in 22 it shows a double.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously the state's going the wrong direction in their portfolio, but they're going to continue to hang this. I'll call it a marker, like they did in the old days here. Once in a while, they're going to leave a marker on this school that's our liability, not theirs, so it doesn't show on their books. So is there ever a point that this going to get caught up? Is this just going to
They
continue?
still maintain that 2038 is the year that they will be at what they think will be a break even or a fully funded pension plan, even with all of that. And I do think when we're talking about where that number is for your 2024 audit, I think it's going to reverse itself quite a bit. So they're planning that obviously all within those calculations and when they plan on having that. But they've maintained really since the beginning of 2038 and haven't deviated from that yet.
But when we first started doing these, if I recall, it was 40 million.
Yep.
And then it was 50, and then it was 80, and now it's 174.
We got close. That exact trend you can see on page 53 as well. That's not a Brighton specific number. That's a plan as a whole number. So starting when it was required to be implemented back in for your 2015 audit, but based on 2014 information, they were 66% funded, and we're at 60% funded now. So it's a valid comment. We got up to that 72% funded last year, but then saw the reversal. They've done some of the additional funding, obviously, that come from the state of Michigan. Some of that was the 147C2 money. I can't remember exactly what the specific number for Brighton was, but it was $1 billion that the state took out of their budget, and it flowed through state aid to all of the districts. I mean, again, a payroll share. You didn't benefit from it at all. It came in on the revenue side of things and went out on the expenditure side of things in an effort to close that gap. But with the way things looked at the end of September 30, 2022, it didn't do much. Yep.
So if it's double again next year, well, then we're really going the wrong way. Okay.
I would say we're in trouble if that happens. So
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Strauss, for your time, and echo Ms. Reed's comments about the outstanding work of our business office. We appreciate all that they did over the course of the past year to put us in the position we are, and of course, the fine work of your firm in completing the audit. I also want to add, I think this is the first year that we had the booklet that was kind of the highlight. I found that to be very helpful. In all the years past since I've been on the board, we just had received the financial statements analysis, and this was really helpful. I would highly recommend
Wonderful.
Continue that in the future.
Yeah, I can't remember if we had it last year or not. It was one of the things that came out at our firm. One of the bright spots out of COVID. We were doing online presentations, and we started doing some of these handouts or slide decks, and it was same response. I mean, overwhelmingly positive from a lot of boards that aren't trying to figure out what part of the page you're talking about when you're going through stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for that. I know, Dr. Outlaw, did you have any
I was just
follow-up?
going to really quickly, Elizabeth Patterson is here. If you could wave your hand over here. We know that we had Mike Angleton, we have Dave Jones, our assistant superintendent, but Elizabeth leads much of the audit, and she did a marvelous job. And I know the team sings her praises, but just wanted to recognize her.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry I didn't give you your due enough, but you really do make the audit team's life easy, and you do a great job. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I believe that concludes the superintendent report, and that moves us into the call to the public portion of our agenda. If there is anyone here this evening who would like to address the board, this is your opportunity to do so. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Our protocol is to fill out a card at the rear of the room, put it in the box to the left of Dr. Mosier. When you are called up, your 3 minutes will begin. Ms. Marks will be keeping track of time. When you have 30 seconds left, she will give you a yellow card. And when your time is up, the red card will be presented, and that will conclude your time. So Jason Ringett.
Heavenly Father, in Jesus' name, let your Holy Spirit fill this room, soften everyone's hearts, bless the school board with wisdom, discernment, give them eyes to see and ears to hear. Bright schools needs to return to God, prayer and academics to our schools. Open up school board meetings with prayer. We need people to have a jawbone to speak up, a backbone to stand up, and a tailbone so they can hold up. Some people are jawless, spineless, and will not fight for our kids. We need people who will fear God, not politics nor man. Public education has gone off the rails. The power, the money, the politics, the unions, and special interest groups are undermining our children's education. Why do 4 out of the 7 board members bend a knee to the teachers union have an office in the high school? Is one of the board members doing a quick pro quo with the teachers union, looking for an endorsement for when they run for a public office position in the future? Are 4 of the board members afraid of the teachers union? Will these 4 board members hold a public meeting listing 10 great reasons why the teachers union has an office in the high school? Where was the teachers union at protecting our kids from being masked up in healthy quarantine that was placed on our kids during the COVID years 2020 until 2022 without any peer-reviewed replicated scientific studies? Where was the union when Mr. Storm and his son were threatened several months ago? Why didn't the union ever fight for great pay and benefits for our teachers, assistants, and parapros? When have they fought for students' education like skilled trades, jobs, technical education, kids' overall education, safety, security, speaking out against bullying? Mr. Trombley, Mr. Conley, Mr. Storm continuously keeps fighting nonstop for kids' education, like skilled trade jobs, technical education, kids' overall education, safety, security, trying to end bullying, fighting for transparency within our school board, fighting for great pay for our teachers, assistants, and parapros. Why in the hell would any board member support teachers union having
Sir, you can't keep, sir, Mr. Ringett, Mr. Ringett,
political puppet
Mr. Ringett,
for
please
the
refrain
fair
from, Mr.
politicians
Ringett.
pushing radical gender's policies
Mr.
within
Ringett.
community schools, endorsing woke left candidates.
Mr. Ringett.
How many left-wing candidates has the union support endorsed for the past 10 years of Bright school boards? I'm just curious with the 2 school board members, Ms. Reed and Ms. Krebs, what have you 2 ladies done for accomplished for our school board kids since you both have been school board members? Ms. Reed, how many times have you missed absent from the past 2 years from the Bright school board meetings? Just curious. It's reckless putting out safety and security protocols to the public, showing blueprint for the left-wing extremists who have been known to be active shooters, killing students within the schools, giving terrorists a future game plan, which puts our law enforcement officers, children, and teachers in harm's way. A lot of politicians are nothing more than cake eaters who are out of touch, knowing nothing about safety, security, or military tactics. They should not be involved in dictating school security policies. Officer Bell and Deputy Schuster should be the only 2 spearheading school security and training for the school board district. Please do not turn their hands or turn over the politics. Let the public does not need to know law enforcement security protocols or their training protocols or procedures. Do you have something to say, Mr. Roger?
Well, your time is up. I am going to warn you that, as you should be aware, it should be obvious to everyone, but just as a reminder, our rules do not allow profanity when a member of the public is speaking to the board. If you do it again, you will not be allowed to speak.
What word
So
was
please refrain
profanity,
yourself.
sir?
So your 3 minutes is up. Thank you very much.
Well, I
Is there-
already had this in
Is there
3
any
minutes.
is there any further cards? All
You
right.
need to stop him
That-
such a
that closes the
massive
call.
attitude
Mr.
and you're
Mr.
rude.
Ringett,
You
you're
are
out
rude
of
all
line.
the time, sir. I
you-
voted for you.
You,
need
sir,
to be,
Mr.
you work
Ringett,
for us.
you're out of line.
You're out of line.
Take a seat,
you,
sir.
You're like Napoleon, you
Mr.
ruled like a dictator
take
all
a
the time
seat.
here. You're out of control.
Ray,
You don't
Mr.
respect
Ray.
the other school board meetings. You need to check yourself, sir.
Okay.
Get a grip.
Are you done?
Are you done?
I'm-
You run the school board like Napoleon, always out of control.
All right, so
act
that,
like a
Mr.
dictator.
Ringett, you're concluded. That closes the call to the public and moves us into the next item agenda, the closed session.
I move that the board go into closed session pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to review confidential written attorney-client communication.
All right, so we have a motion by Ms. Marks, support by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right, roll call vote, Ms.
No, I do have some discussion.
Okay.
As it relates to the closed session, when will the public be made aware of what we're going into closed session about?
We are prohibited from disclosing the contents of the closed session, and at some point, if there is going to be any action taken as a result of information shared in the closed session, that will be addressed at a future board meeting. So when that is, I can't tell you. But that's, for purposes of today, where the motion on the agenda is for,
Is there
on the
general
table.
guidance you can provide to the public related to the subject matter that we're going into closed session to review when the board will take action on said subject matter?
No. All right, roll call vote, please. Ms. Ackerman.
Mr. Trombley.
Yep.
Mrs. Marks.
Yes.
Mr. Conley.
Yes.
Ms. Reed.
Yes.
Dr. Krebs.
Yes.
Mr. Storm.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes. So that passes 7-0. We are now in closed session. Everyone who is here is welcome to stay. We are going to retire to a separate room, and then we will return at the conclusion of our closed session. So we stand adjourned.
Just a reminder that the camera is going to remain on.
Room 135?
131.
135 upstairs. That's why I asked that question. I figured. Yeah.
That's one bill that's not positive, so we'd have to look up the right.
I think we should do that, because we gotta get one out for this summer. If that's the case.
Yeah, she's got 4 trash.
Make sure she stays, it's key, keeping to stay forward. Most of what we have are here for.
Hey, do you think I can start packing up some of these chairs now?
Do what?
Pack up some of these chairs now? Are they coming back, Brady? Who? Your people? I don't know.
No. All the comments are over there.
Let me go there.
Let me help you pick up.
Yeah, you know, we can put chairs.
Yeah.
Well, not all of them, but like, they can't see out there, right? Like the cameras, the cameras cut off.
A couple rows.
Yeah, leave a couple rows, but I can pull these backwards. Yeah, do you care?
You're doing,
My kid.
yeah, you're doing, put it on the back or just stack on the side.
Well, I'm gonna need all this space, so maybe I should, do you guys put them in the closet?
You just set it on the
side.
side.
Okay.
But you set them on, we'll set them over here and then. Stand over there. Leave those scoops in the front.
Yeah, leave a few in the front.
This is fine. They get it all played out, but we got a bunch of people here. Doesn't need to be here. Never here, share.
I just thought that I could get a few of them down, you know? Yeah. Start
Good thinking, Liz. That's why I was just thinking.
Yeah.
My favorite can start.
It's okay.
No, it's not.
We bring more chairs. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to. This is their second table. We're going this.
I think it's this one.
You got it?
Yeah, I did it right.
No, you just closed it.
I
look at it.
Well, it's almost counterintuitive. It looks.
We're back. Are you? Well, I'm looking to the high schools. Usually
Yeah,
the
I know,
high
that's
schools to the back
Oh,
of
okay.
the space, right? I mean, we're really back. Yeah, you need the most. They want to go together, yeah, for sure.
Are you gonna need some of the extra?
Oh, yeah,
ones?
every single
All of
one. There's gonna be like 40-some people in here. Do we lock it up?
Come on.
So,
Are you gonna be more of those?
I'll need, no, we're gonna keep them just in case we have to go. We got 6 people. 3, and 1, 2, 5, 6, 7.
We're also gonna have tables where the chairs are too.
Yeah,
So we should
like,
just
yeah,
put some-
yeah, so you can put
So just some to the side.
Like here, one. I think some of my elementaries just have 4. Let me look at the numbers. Because that will help me tell you how many students.
Yeah.
Because if there's just 4, I just put you at one table.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys, this is great. Not that I ever had thousands of people today. So Hawkins had 3 to 4 people coming total, so they just need a table. So we can over 4 single tables, right? Yeah, for Hawkins gets 4, Hilton has 4. So I could just put those like up front here. I'm just gonna use This one needs 3 more. This one I cannot.
I think they all are. I think I see what,
Okay.
yeah, that's all lost. It keeps on
Like
getting
I tried every
back.
direction. One of these will be won't be on the street. So let me around the block now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So
You're
let's
down to nice
keep
chairs.
going.
I know, right?
I'll put an interview right there.
That's good to know. Yeah, these
Areas in here.
This is nice furniture.
So, well, we will use this to.
You could even move it across the board.
Yep.
You just don't store very.
No. And the tables are a lot better.
Yes.
I'll separate these four for the elementaries. You want to do it like, yeah, I'll have to put like one of them, these go separate. Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, 2 different schools. That's fine, and then I can push those back further.
Utilize these chairs.
No, we don't, they're fine, in case we have some people come back.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying, yeah.
And then when I'm done, I'll just push that back further. But, no, we can do. We short chairs. Well, I'll have to use some of the other ones too. I pulled, last time I pulled some of them.
I think we're good. You can borrow these guys.
I still need that 7 chairs. My other one, Scranton, yeah, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, only 7 or 8. So there's 7 here. Okay. Maltese up there. They'll need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 chairs. So, yeah, just take 2 of these nicer ones and put them over there. What's this one? Okay. And then got 4 elementaries, how many chairs each? Well, I'll probably need 4 each, but I'll grab some from downstairs. That's an extra table. That's good. Then I'll pull this one aside for human ideas. Well, you gonna do that and move these this way? The 2 elementaries this way? No, I see that. I probably have to turn it so I can see the screen. How many pictures do we can see the screen? I will need one of those probably. Just so we know. Oh, so we just move one of these back? Yeah, I mean, I guess have a little more room. Well, you know what, though, Spencer, I think has. I think 40 minutes left. Not really. You think you do? Yeah, you definitely we have 6, right? Oh, yeah, you have 6. So maybe move these 2 together? So, yeah, move these 2 together, yeah. And that'll be 40. Yeah, let's move these 2 together for hoarding, because you guys are a little bit bigger. And then we can have the other 4 elements like this as well. Yeah. I mean, I could turn it around, you could just change your chairs, I guess, right? Yeah, I just think this is better so that you can see it a little better. And I'll get different chairs for all that.
You don't want these chairs that are over here? I don't know yet. There's a lot of decision making right now. This is already like, whew, yeah. Like I thought I was gonna be here later than. Ta-da! I gotta show you, she's doing so good. Honestly, we're like, okay, we'll have to move.
Okay. You know, if we were in Taylor, we'd get in trouble for moving those tables. It'd be a grievance. And you know, Kathy would call you.
Want you to stay? Okay. It's like the last item on the agenda. I'm sorry. Okay.
Go home.
Yes.
Go home. Yep, go home. Go home. I'm here tonight. I don't want to questions for the Go home.
Thank you, Jason.
Let me think. No. Go home.
There's a whole bunch of.
Go home. I'm gonna say. I'm sick. What should happen here is we should hear these manifestations, these questions that we follow up with.
I'm not gonna answer any questions on that. Other than parents, it's all.
It's fine. We're good. And if not, we'll answer questions online. Okay? Yeah. Got it. Are you putting me like there's something coming their way? I feel like I should shoot. And this like kind of goes over like the getting ready, like getting ready to implement. And right, so I have that. This is like how do you ensure readiness? So this is the different elements. And it has big. So this is, see this thing, I have this thing where it's like, so you cut these apart, and then you use. I just see it's the. I have a lot that I did. Okay, this is, okay, so I have this is like where, like it says, staff conferences, students and results, staff design products, and checklist, staff master and evaluate 2 times, like something like that. And then they have to put it like on that big sheet. So they show you. Like you figure out like where it actually is. This is, yeah, this is like that. That's like knowledge and skill opportunity to implement. So that's like kind of that first. There's one of our slides that have that in there. Yeah, it's kind of like that. So like a bit. But there's also like one of these things they have. Okay, so. one that I already read. Yes, so we don't really need that one, that I already read. I mean, we'll need it because we might want to put it somewhere, and then the next one shows you know that example of one. But I had one like that for, that we can use either for, here's it for, cultural thinking, or look at, I have one for gradual release medal, and I have a little article that says like what are the 4 pieces to it. Then what? Yeah, so we can do like just the gradual release like we want, because that's just an example. So you want to get rid of that one? Or can you delete it? We don't really need that other one too, because that's a monitoring one, so I would dump that one too. Maybe it's in the actual, you know what, I bet it's in. Let's go back to this plan about because this is that line, right? Oh, yeah, so determine the implementation stage. This is. No. So, okay, can you go on the planning document, Kim? The orange one? And this is identifying your implementation criteria. Go down to page 3, implementation. I don't even see you on it. You don't even see it. Still on the same one. But it doesn't matter, even if you're on that one, scroll all the way down. So they have this success ones, like success strategy, success criteria are present and aligned to a learning target. So you do success criteria. So they have an example here. This would be good. How about the gold standard one? Because I was thinking of like, should we put this as a sample one too? I just think they're good examples. You don't want to do much with it, but so that one, all right, I can't find the thing. There's something in here that. Oh, there's the. Maybe it's in this. which is the state one. That's happening because that's the planning one. And we. And so. Are you on the back one? Yeah, look at that one. And go to the lighting, so identify all the research trends and we're gonna see those are the 3 things. Okay. Right. Great, and then we come on slide 6. On that one, look at your level. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, so like slide 6 says what it is, and it says here the smart wall. And then you see it down here, you can click on that one, it says examples of smart walls.
Question. Vacation days are based on the fiscal year, correct? So they reset on July 1st? Okay.
Talking about ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
It says per year, I figure. Okay. I'm just trying to plan it out.
Because they're within one contract, so, yeah, so that's my understanding.
Okay.
I know I have to sometimes create mine. I wonder if the holidays we get.
Yeah.
But holidays, I'm gonna use vacation days, or around holidays and when I don't, so.
Right.
But next week I might be coming on Wednesday just to.
Yeah.
What's slide are you?
I know during spring break and Christmas break, I might do a couple days each or something.
Right. I don't care when you do that, I don't know, but. Oh, here. See, here's for these exploration, installation, and initial, that's what else. This here. Slide 50. Can you do it? Right. So maybe some.
Here behind, right?
You can either hit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yep. But yeah,
You can't do both.
and it does say it can't do both. So you get-
So either you can either carry over 5 or you pay out 5.
Yeah, and then any others you have left beyond that 5, I think can get rolled over into your sick bank.
Okay, that's what I
Which get
was,
paid out at like a lower rate.
so like if you don't use them,
Right.
they'll convert it. You'll either roll over 5 or convert to sick bank.
Mhm.
On slide 16.
So in any one year, you can have 30 vacation days at most. If you roll over
Yes, if you roll
5,
over, yep.
but then you can only roll over 5, so if you don't use your 30, then they can just convert that.
Right, you at least
To
use
sick
like
days.
25 of them or you give them to the sick bank, yeah.
Okay.
Which is better than lose them together, but not as valuable.
We also get like personal days, right? Something
I think it's within those sick days.
Right, but if you get a, I'm just thinking, like,
Yeah.
if you wanted to like work over Christmas break, then you know what, I'm gonna, or if you want to take days over Christmas break, you just say, you know what, I just take them as personal instead of.
Yeah, that's what I gotta look at. I don't, I think we can use some as personal. I have to look at it up. I'm not 100% on that.
Well, I know, so that's where again, like, I mean, we do have.
Oh, here we go. Here's what So you can use 5 of your sick days for person, for a week. In lieu of vacation.
She's got to be in advance. Yeah. So technically that gives you almost 30.
Right.
That helps them.
Yep.
Yeah, and like you, ours are slightly, like they're prorated this year.
Right.
So I know
It's like about 3/4,
I started out with like 19 instead of 25 and like,
Oh, yeah.
that's something you can go in smart and look at that. I went in smart and looked at mine and they have, yours is either 19 or 20, depending on how it's rolled out.
Right.
11 or 12. I think,
But
for the
if I
sick
use
days.
5, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it shouldn't
All right.
restrict that necessarily.
That's what I said.
Yeah, just pretend I have jury duty.
It's number 20, right?
Say that in the mic a little closer.
I can use one for the 12th, okay.
Usually jury duty is one of the things like you get.
Yeah, no, I just happened to scroll upon it.
And then you get paid back what they give you.
Yes.
Which is
You're
usually
like-
pretty small, right?
It's usually like, what is it, like $8 or $10 a day?
Is that all they give?
I don't know. It's been so long.
Have you done jury duty before?
I have, a little, like, a long time ago, when we were first married, geez, yeah. I got called and served, like a week.
I've never done jury duty yet.
Then the other times I've been called in, never selected and released. Yes, I did that. Yeah,
Called in twice then?
That was in the 80s. I got picked for a civil case. Which was pretty interesting.
Would be.
My wife's been served on a federal, but downtown
really?
Chicago. Federal gun charge. I can use.
So you're pulling
That's on vacation day.
It just says like discuss and use for the schools, whatever terms that you use for the past, or you use for education.
Okay.
So we can do something.
I'm trying to plan.
All right. Ready, sir?
Thanks for keeping all stuff safe.
Sure.
It was a tough role.
Keep everything safe. We rearranged. You didn't even notice we rearranged?
Nobody else. The auditors. I know we're still on camera. Are we still on mic?
Yes. We probably were not very excited. If there's any guests left. Since then,
You know that the news they can step away. Go on. Then they can come back.
That's true. Yeah, because I could go on it, I guess. And look, but- I know it's like.
I mean, it's a learning.
But I'm
No,
just-
it
timed out. There's like
Right, it's like, so is that gonna be like a Christmas card?
something, yeah, it's all like we get like 50 shots every year. And that's just what they usually get like 60 more shots, but 3 weeks or something. But yeah, usually they pick out those.
Yeah, some ideas.
My son, your kid shot?
No, my
Your kid
son,
shot?
my son, he was picking on his dog. He goes, everybody's afraid of pit bulls. So I got him this shirt, it says security.
Look, he doesn't look too.
He's not
too
very,
intimidating,
he's
is
not
he?
very happy.
I said, who plans on like a district meeting after a board meeting this
She's eating real food now, so she gave us first. Food tonight.
Do you have total?
Two.
Two. By the same?
Yes. Yeah, no, just my daughter, Kev.
Okay.
Kev, that's, Kev's dog is it.
So she can't do much more than one.
So who's this?
Oh, two.
Eight. Three. My daughter took Harper.
At 3 years old?
She loves that.
Does she like it? Our girls at 6 like the others.
Now you got chocolate.
There's like random songs that'll come up like our Pandora or something else. They started singing her songs. How much are only 6? We're only 3.
She's trying to use Disney eyes.
Disney and I sang one. That was better than what I thought I was going to be.
You got a couple of games.
Yeah, they were, it was captivating for them. We saw.
Okay.
All right. We are now back in open session, and we are now moving to the for action portion of our agenda. Item A, the regular meeting minutes of October 23, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented? Moved by Dr. Krebs. Supported by Ms. Bartz. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Moves us to item B, Human Resources Report.
Yep. So we just have 3 things on here. We do have one resignation, which wasn't recent. It was effective September 5th, 23. This was just a past clerical error, never ended up actually on the sheet. So we wanted to make sure that we did our due diligence and got it on the sheet. So that's where that one is from. The other 2 is the flip flop on positions. We're looking to hire Austin Dewey, which is actually a past Brighton grad. So looking to get him his first job as a 4th grade teacher at Hawkins to fill a vacancy created by a teacher who went and transitioned to become a district coach.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented? Moved by Dr. Krebs,
Support?
support by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? Mr. Conley.
Yes, thank you. So remind me, this teacher that went on to be a district coach, they stopped teaching and they become a district coach. What does that mean? When they become a district coach?
So the vacancy actually, it was kind of a layered of a event. So we had, and correct me if I get this wrong, but we had Chelsea Boyd, who got the principal job at Spencer. So that created a void in her position. So Cody Alexander took the MTSS spot, which she was the coach at Hawkins, which created a vacancy, and then which we're filling now with Austin Dewey. So it was kind of a chain of events that led to, and we should be at the end of that chain with this hire.
a year, we hope, right?
Yep, yes.
So then what is the job duties of a district coach?
Sure. So I can answer some of those questions. So currently, a little bit remodeled it. So originally they were content coaches. So we had, when I got here, I think you had a ELA coach, a math coach. Kim Hubert used to be a math coach. You had 4 literacy coaches who were maybe RTI facilitators at the time, 2 science implementation coaches. I think you had a few others. And so reorg that into some instructional coaches so they're not content specific anymore. So what we found was happening specifically more at the elementary is that oftentimes the science coach would come in and say, these are things you should do. And then the ELA coach would come in and say, this is things you should do. And that's a lot for an elementary teacher to get multiple people. So we reorged them into instructional coaches. So what do? They focus on coaching teachers. They work, especially in the elementary, kind of side by side with a principal to help them, support them, because they are the only person. They don't have a counterpart in the elementary in planning professional learning. They are in classrooms modeling. They take small groups with students sometimes. A lot of things. They observe classrooms. They set up observations so teachers can go observe other classrooms. They've done that across the district. So we've had teachers go to a different elementary to visit so that they'll even like watch that classroom and then they talk with them afterwards and talk about observations. So they're always looking at ways to improve instruction for students. So lots of things that they could do.
So in the process, are we making sure that all of our elementaries have the same opportunities for the students? That we have a consistency between the elementary schools, be it Spencer, Hilton, whatever, are we, because there's been a time where we had more programs in some than others and or different programs. Are we the same now virtually?
So coaching wise, for sure. So we have 7 for the district and we have 7 buildings. So that's exciting, or we're getting ready to get our 7th, I should say. So we do have that. In regards to programming, I would say that's getting closer and closer to being, I'm not going to say 100%. I mean, that's pretty difficult to guarantee, but I would say we're always working that way. And I think these positions, along with those coordinator positions, help do that. We actually have people, the room is set up differently because they're going to be coming in talking about that programming and keeping things more consistent across the district.
And in our situation at Scranton, where we want to improve our technology and our opportunities for students, are these the people, the district coaches being responsible for that? So we have someone to go talk to if we're not getting where we think, or I think they should be, or?
So they help with that. So they've actually been in different classrooms helping teachers. Again, they do anything. It could even be technology. It really could be, but it's anything that we're looking to do better, right? So moving away from direct instruction, there's a time for it, but personalizing more. So helping teachers set up centers. So students are, getting what they need during a class period versus everybody sitting and getting. So they're there to help support the movement of that instruction, I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, discussion? All right. All those in favor of the approval of the Human Resources Report as presented signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Moves us to item C, new Hilton lockers. Mr. Trombley, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, this has been asked for through part of the bond. It's new lockers for Hilton. We've gone through, we've put them through the rest of the schools, and Hilton's the only one that hasn't gotten them. And this would be a not to exceed number of $130,000 out of bond funds.
All right. So do we have a motion to approve the purchase of new lockers for Hilton Elementary not to exceed $130,000?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Mr. Connolly. Any discussion? All right. And just further clarification there, I mean, there's a lot of these that are rusted out at the bottom, and the lockers that we're looking to purchase are consistent with what, going back to the consistency from one building to another, it's similar lockers that we have in the other elementary schools.
And the reason for this, bringing it to action right now, is because we need to get them ordered in order to get them installed here, hopefully over Christmas break if we can make it.
Yeah, and they're out to bid right now.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. That moves us to the for future action portion of our agenda. Item A, the Brighton Community Ed Senior Center 2023 Title VI Plan. Dr. Outlaw.
Sure, I can do this. So as we know, there are different forms, particularly with our senior center and community education program, where there are annual reports. So there's one that's going to be on mobility that will probably come up during the winter time. This is dealing with Title VI from the Department of Transportation. And on page 10, there's the letter from the State of Michigan Department of Transportation where they indicated that this is a sufficient report and everything is good on it, except that it needs approval by the Board of Education. So this is why it's here.
All right. Any questions?
Is this an annual, this is annual?
I believe so.
All right. That moves us to item B, extension of superintendent contract. So we are going to have for action at the next meeting, an extension of the superintendent's contract and any modifications to that contract that may be proposed. It's customary for the superintendent contracts to be 5 years. We historically, prior to Dr. Outlaw's tenure, we, consistent with custom, we would annually renew and extend the superintendent's contract to extend it out to 5 years. When we reviewed Dr. Outlaw's contract 2 academic school year, a year and a half ago, so it would be the school year 2021, 2022, we made a modification of the contract, but we didn't extend it. We didn't do anything with respect to the contract in the last school year. And so part of this would be to kind of catch up from the previous omissions and then look at any other modifications that might be appropriate. The process would be for the executive committee, Mr. Trombley and Ms. Marks and I to communicate with Dr. Outlaw and whatever from that may come forward as a recommendation would be subject to for action in December, the December meeting. So, Mr. Storm.
Just curious, who requested this item be added to the for future action portion of the agenda?
I did.
You did?
Yes. Well, in consultation with the executive committee as well. I mean, we talked about the executive committee. I brought it forward as for the discussion at the executive committee.
Okay. And one question that is related to this, the superintendent's performance review. We have not completed the superintendent's performance review yet, correct?
Correct. That will be done in June, May or June.
So
depending on the timing of
the ask on the table tonight is to consider an extension prior to doing the performance review?
Well, the performance review, this actually, there wasn't an extension for the 2 years that he was rated highly effective. So frankly, it was really an omission by the board to not do that extension in the same school years in which he was granted and recognized as a highly effective superintendent. So we will be addressing that. And so then next year, this issue should come up based upon the superintendent evaluation that will be conducted next spring. So then next year we will be voting again to determine whether we extend it for another year. So it's a rolling process, which is what we did throughout Dr. Gray's tenure. It's what is customarily done in all districts. So that's why this is really a reconciliation of omissions at the board level for the past 2 years. And then when we revisit the issue then next year to potentially extend it, it will be based on obviously the evaluation that will be conducted in the spring.
Wouldn't that be a function of the board at that particular time, though, Roger? I mean, ultimately, of all of the things that we consider as a school board, probably next to safety, security, some of the Title IX items that we've been discussing. I mean, the employment of our superintendent is very, very high on the list of what we consider as a school board. Would you agree?
Yeah. That's why I think it's important that we address this issue.
I guess where I'm just a little bit taken aback or confused is I have never had a conversation with you as our board president about this particular agenda item. And to me, wouldn't this warrant some level of outreach before it's actually something we discussed at the board meeting where we would have, you would be soliciting input from the collective board before actually adding something like this to the agenda for future action?
No, I mean, we've got a month between now. I mean, it's for future action. I mean, we're not looking to make any decisions now. We're going to have further follow-up by the executive committee. I will certainly solicit, or any of the, any of the executive committee members can solicit feedback from, any of the board members, and I expect that we would do that.
So
And
as the president of the school board, you don't feel that there's any obligation to your peers on the board, all of us, to have some dialogue around extending the contract of the superintendent
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've got another whole month to have that conversation, and
prior to it being on the agenda?
no.
Okay.
And I mean, we've reviewed it as we do everything with the executive committee, and the decision was made to put it on the agenda for future action. We have a month to have further dialogue. And if ultimately you don't agree with it, I mean, any board member can, agree or approve it or not approve it or vote not to approve
It
it.
just seems that as a collective board, like this, if there was one thing I would want collectively, it's to evaluate the superintendent in a constructive manner before extending a contract that's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and give the board an opportunity to have dialogue around that evaluation process.
Well, again, this is in part, there has been that evaluation process.
I've never been a part of it.
No, because you weren't on the board at the time. That's my point. So this is really catching up to where we should be as a district, consistent with what is customary with superintendent contracts. That's really what this is, from a timing standpoint, that's what in part this is about. Ultimately, there is going to be an evaluation that will take place, again, May or June. I mean, that'll have to be determined. And then when we revisit this issue next November about potentially extending the contract for another year to, again, maintain the 5-year, term of the contract, it will, obviously, we will incorporate what was the collective evaluation that had taken place in June. So this is really about getting back on track for what.
But I mean, I wasn't on the board 2 years ago, like you keep referencing the past and catching up with the past. I mean, to me, that would be a function of the current board to make that determination, right?
Yeah, that's what we're going to do. I mean, if you don't support it, I mean, that's your choice. I mean, it's not
Of
a,
course, it's my
yeah,
choice.
right,
Of course.
yeah.
But I guess it just seems odd that the item for consideration for future action is extending the contract of the most important employee in the district who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we're going to extend the contract before we as a collective board evaluate that individual.
Oh, again,
It doesn't seem proper.
okay, well, I disagree.
Okay.
All right, any further discussion? All right, that moves us into item C, allocation of general fund surplus 2023, 2024. Mr. Jones, Dr. Outlaw, who would like to launch us on
I
this
can
topic?
mention, if it's okay. Mr. Jones, do you want to go first, or?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
So this is a topic coming up in the future. I think in the second meeting of January,
Correct.
I think Mr. Jones is targeting doing a budget amendment at that time. He will have more precise numbers. Currently, we're still based on the projected budget, so I'll have more precise numbers at that time. There will be a budget surplus at that time. And I know there's been conversation in the bond committee about that, but how some of those dollars might be allocated.
And the finance committee.
And finance committee. And yes, there's different committees that have talked about this, and there's some different topics out there, but this will be a topic that the board will need to tackle. And we'd recommend doing it when we get those numbers. Is that okay, Mr.
Yep,
Jones?
my target is to have it done. The first meeting in January is your organizational meeting. So there's a lot of business to take care of there. So my target is to have it for the second board meeting in January.
For approval, the amended budget? Okay.
Yeah.
So is there, in terms of the process, if we keep this allocation on for future action for the December meeting, I mean, I think we should keep it on there for future action in anticipation of it obviously coming forward in the amended budget. Are we going to have any substantive discussion conceptually that we can then, because I think from a bigger picture, the question is the money just going to the general fund, or do we allocate it towards capital improvement fund? That's the kind of conversation I think we need to have as a board that then gives you the direction when you're putting together the amended budget where these funds are going to be allocated. And so I think that conversation needs to happen before we get to, your.
If I might, Roger, on that, we've been trying for weeks, months to get the board to sit down on this, and they know they got a surplus budget of $4 million plus maybe 5 coming. Okay, that's what's in the hopper, correct? Close.
The original budget was 4.1 million.
Yeah.
But when we put together the amended budget, you'll get a much more accurate number of what's available.
Okay, let's just say it's 4 million is available. We have to forecast, and if there are needs that we're going to try to address so it doesn't roll into another season, another school year, we keep going down the road. So that's just my position as your finance chair. I would truly like to see discussions nailing down what we're going to do. Let's just say you have the ABC option. Let's say it's 5 million. Let's say it's 4. Let's say it's 3. You can even go to D and say it's 2. There needs to be a thought process in place so this gets going. And it's not looking out the rearview mirror. It's got to be looking out the windshield. Okay, this is forward action that can take place. Taxpayers' dollars. We don't have, you heard from finance tonight, we don't have any need to add more to fund equity. We're there. We're there. So 15 million, wherever we were at, is good. Now we can go forward with spending the taxpayers' dollars. And if it's the science labs, it's a combination with math labs or whatever it is, being in the finance chair position, I'd be glad to bring it another meeting coming up yet this year and bring it back to you guys, and we can spend it hypothetically and get it spent. It's here.
Won't go off on a long-winded tangent here, but I've shared this with the board. I feel security is one avenue of opportunity for us to use meaningful dollars like that. So
if we haven't covered something, we've
Yeah,
covered a lot.
But I think it fundamentally goes back to if we're not going to put it in a general fund, where are we going to put it? I think at least from the standpoint of the bond committee, we talked about putting it in a capital improvement fund, which will go into that fund. It won't necessarily mean it's going to get spent this year. I mean, because there's going to be long-term planning for those capital projects, whatever they may be. That's really, at this junction, Mr. Connolly, I completely agree with you. But I think
that's impossible.
I think that at this juncture, what we're really talking about is the budget, where that money gets slotted, from a budget standpoint, not making a decision. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's like I said, for weeks I've been asking, months actually. Had it on the agenda even in the finance committee months ago. We talked to our prior finance chief about it, if you recall, Dr. Elba. It was on there way ahead of time. These numbers are forecasted with accuracy. So those weren't just laid out there. They're pretty accurate. So we're empowered to make sure these dollars get utilized to benefit the students. And I brought it up earlier about falling flat. I feel at Scranton Middle School in some areas that need to be addressed. And if it's extra help, if it's teachers, support teachers, whatever it takes to get that program up and running. I mean, we have money to do it. And I hate to sit here saying we have a wallet that's packed full and it's not being used. Students need the services that these dollars can provide, period. We have perfect firsthand information and knowledge that these things have to change in order to get what we want. And that's going to be by spending the money for these students. So that's where I'm at. Spend it. And on behalf of the students.
Okay.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I would like to see as we're thinking this through. I know we've talked about some of the recommendations from the administration with regard to capital funds, which I think is a great way to prevent one of the things that I know you're always concerned about, Mr. Conley, which is using bond dollars to buy ceiling tiles, right?
Correct.
If we set money aside to make sure that we are keeping up with our buildings, with some of the larger objects that are probably going to need to be replaced before we want to go for the next bond, this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate the fiscal responsibility of the board in anticipation of anything else we might ever have to ask our local voters to support, right? Making sure that we are good stewards of the money helps to ensure that they are willing to approve bonds in the future or sinking funds in the future if this board ever determines that we'd like to put those matters in front of the public. So I think that that's an idea that has real merit, and we've identified as a board our commitment to safety and security of students, of the science and technology learning that we want our students to do. That's a lot of the work that we did through this last bond, and we have an opportunity to perhaps continue that. I would really appreciate the administration coming to us with their top 10, top 5 ways to appropriate these funds so that we can have a discussion here at the board table. I'm sure you guys have had some of that at the finance committee, but I'd like to have all of us engaged in that conversation so we can set the priorities for that January budget.
You should take over another committee. You're already on 16. So then you'd have it firsthand. So, okay. In conclusion, that part of that is that it's great we have general fund dollars that come in per student, per pupil funding. There's a percentage of that that's allocated towards the student, the paying for teachers, paying for buildings and maintenance and everything else. These windfall surpluses are not going to be here forever, in my opinion. And they have to be used, like you're saying, correctly. I absolutely don't believe they should be used for the general maintenance. I think we've discussed in the future a sinking fund for Brighton area schools. And the reality is that done correctly can also be the money that would be the everyday expenditure for things that we don't get covered by the per pupil funding. Now, and I'm not a big person on raising taxes, by the way, to our citizens, but there are certain things that go along with it. These dollars are critical. They're here for a purpose. The board agreed, I didn't agree, to hand off $6 million in one shot. I'm bringing it up because I haven't forgotten it, regarding compensation and contracts. This $4 million or 5 or 6 or 3, but I'm going to say it's closer to 5 or 6, just my speculation because of the numbers will come in from shared services, need to be addressed to the students, not to carpet, not to ceiling tiles, not to anything else, because we've covered all that. And our general fund dollars will pay for that without this money. So I just believe it needs to be the biggest impact on students we can have. And then if we do, it'll show the same stewardship of the money as if we did put it in different funds to, put together a maintenance program. I don't believe that's what it should be used for.
Well, just for clarification, we don't buy ceiling tiles out of bond money because again, that's maintenance and we're not allowed to buy that out of bond money. But I can tell you through the bond meetings, the discussions have been to renovate 10 science rooms at the high school. And right now, if you think about it, you merely put $200,000 into each room, which probably isn't going to make it with the renovation of the room, the furniture of the room, and refitting the room. There's your $2 million right there. And that's in science rooms at the high school, which I remember you asked for, by the way.
It's been asked for it in 17.
Could we have some students from the high school who are involved in the leadership program go to Stanford or U of M and then paid for them to go? And
I can let Dr. Outlaw speak to
best labs in the
what he's conveyed to us in the bond meeting in regards to that.
Sure. We've had our science teachers have been collaborating with people across the country. We started, I believe in the spring, we had some good conversations just to stretch some thinking. They've made some visits to different places, but I would love to see some places like Stanford or places like that that really stretch. But some of the things that we've really been talking a lot about is one of the big areas has been flexible furniture. That's a big trend in science because it builds into collaboration, moving away from some of the static stations for labs. That's one big area. There's functional areas like ventilation and gas lines and things that are really important for different things like chemistry classes. But technology has been a big area that we would like to bring in some people to demo some of the cutting edge technology and how it might work. And so that's the next conversation. Again, we've talked to people around the country, but we'd like to get our teachers a chance to be able to test out those things, get our students to try it out, and let's get their feedback on things and see how it, at the end of the day, what you want with these, it's great to have a beautiful lab, but the idea with these investments need to be, how do we change instruction to better prepare our students for the future? And that needs to be the driving force. So conversations continue.
Yeah.
100%. And we know we're low in some of those areas. So.
And obviously, we're the, the prototype room is being built out as we speak, which is going to be part of the foundation.
Part of the bond to start with.
Right.
Yeah. A whole bunch of
And
it.
so
Yes.
that will be instrumental in providing, some of the feedback that we'll be looking for as we look to then make the decisions as to how we're going to build out and equip the other 10 rooms that would be potentially funded by, so we got to initially start with the funding discussion first.
Right. And again, I don't think the 200,000 is going to cover it when it costs $50,000 just to tear the room apart.
Right.
And to cap the utilities and get it ready for the new fit. So
maybe it's 250, but the
Maybe.
idea is I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised in the budget, and we're left in pretty good shape with the funding that came in and the per pupil funding increases, which appear to be going to continue, correct? There's no forecast that they're going to reduce per pupil funding in the next school year at this point.
Not heard one word about.
But we have no idea, to be honest, right?
Pardon me?
We have no idea, to be honest, because it comes down from the state.
If it happens, every single district will not be prepared.
Right. See? So.
In 20 years, I think there's been 1 year where it did not go forward, even during downturns.
So
It
we're
went-
pretty good on where we can start planning and putting our dream sheet together and begin the movement versus sitting tight and it happening 2 years from now or a year from now. That's all I'm saying. And so I'll be quiet for a minute.
All right, that moves us to item D, the Troon Policy 3118 update. Mr. Anastasov.
Take this one or start at least. So at our policy committee, we discussed this one. This one was part of the larger package that Troon went through even before I was here. This one was held up a little bit because the board wanted to take a look at it a little bit more. We wanted to take it to committee a little bit further due to some of the other Title IX items happening during that time. So we looked it over at this point and the action items. We are looking to get it approved as is with the Troon recommendations. They mainly addressed different definitions of sexual assault and expanded upon that, but there are 3 other minor changes, but that are still impactful to this. So we felt like moving forward with this is important, even though we do recognize that there may be other changes to Title IX down the future where the board sees a need to, or we know there are other federal regulations that are going to be rolling out that are going to cause pretty massive changes to this as well. So this is probably just step 1 of a couple more.
And just so everybody's aware, the red lines that you see in the document are entirely from Troon. The policy committee didn't suggest any additional red lines on top of what Troon had put in their package.
All right. That moves us to item E, new course adoptions. Dr. Mosier?
At our next meeting, we're going to look for your approval of 4 courses currently for adoption. They're listed there. We have 3 advanced placement courses and then the JROTC program listed there. All of them are pending an approval from the organization. So College Board, we have to submit a syllabus thing to get approval, just like JROTC. We'll wait on that approval as well.
Excuse me.
Yep.
So for the AP courses, you're following, these courses are all following their standard curriculum and textbooks, that these are decisions that are used for these courses?
Correct. So College Board, you submit your syllabus and then they have recommended, so we'll bring textbooks forward. So this is just the course. They have some listed here that they're going to suggest, but we'll bring those forward separately. But yes, those are approved through College Board, just like, well, similar to the JROTC, there's a textbook already approved through that process.
Okay, and then speaking, I have a couple questions about the JROTC also.
Sure.
Is this for one course or is this for the 4? It looks to me like it's the full program.
It's all four because it's a continuation. So similar, I guess I'd call it similar to your economics, right? There's a micro and a macro. We're going to offer both of them as a continuation. So most students would take both courses.
So I guess, I mean, I just have a couple questions. I feel like for the 4 courses, I feel it's pretty light in terms of what's happening in the courses. It's just listing the content, and we're listing out the state standards that are covered, but are they covered in all 4 courses? Or are they covered in the first course? I guess I feel like I need a little bit more information.
So for JROTC, it would be similar to, again, I would just say like that is a standard course. You kind of purchase the program as is, you don't add to it. So what we're doing is we're saying we would be able to give a VAPA credit to it, a visual performing applied arts credit. So a lot of your career and tech ed programs get this credit. It's a little more lenient in kind of going through the requirements for graduation. So we said we could definitely do that without having to go through a lot of other hoops. So the standards are just kind of the anchor standards for those. And then there's several other standards listed under the VAPA for them. So what you see for the VAPA standards for the state, those are the anchor. And then there's probably several other standards that are listed below that.
So then I guess.
It's okay.
Is this for all 4 courses? Then are we approving all 4 courses, the whole program, or are we just approving?
So this would be for all 4. So this is approving the program. So again, I would think of orchestra. Before I got here, the approval was that we were going to continue orchestra. And every year we didn't bring back, we brought back the high school one, but I don't know that they originally had that one written. So, but it was an approval for an orchestra program. So that kind of went through, I would say a similar type thing.
Could we see a little bit more information on these then? I just feel like in terms of the outline, just listing topics doesn't seem like very much.
Sure. Just let me know what you're looking for.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions. I thought I read in here, you can clarify for me,
Sure.
for the AP econ classes, those can be taken in place of standard econ for high school students if they choose, is that correct? So they
Right,
could
so-
opt into the AP instead of regular?
Yep. So a graduation requirement is economics. You cannot actually PC out of that. So this can count in lieu of it. Another graduation requirement is civics. AP comparative government will not count for civics because it's a comparative government course. Our AP US government course does count for it. AP comparative government is a semester course. Our AP US government is a year-long course.
Okay. So I have kind of I think it's interrelated to last year too.
Sure.
So I know there were a number of courses approved.
Yep.
Not all of them, I don't think, ended up running at the high school, right? Do you know do you know which ones ran and which ones didn't?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find that out.
I'm
Sure.
just curious because I'm wondering if any of those are worth offering again. You know, if it was a one-time, if they were great courses and they were close, if
Sure.
there would maybe be room to offer them again. It just didn't catch fire that first time, but maybe it would the second time around. And then my second question related to that is I'm pretty certain one of the courses that ran was the pre-med science, or I can't remember the exact title. That is currently an elective, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what fits into your
Yep.
schedule. What room do we have as a district to allow some of these classes to be approved to count toward graduation requirements so that students have more opportunities in their schedules to take
Sure.
some of these new courses that we're putting into the course guide? If you could just remind me what that process is or how that works with Michigan Merit.
Yep. So let me go to I think your first question was about kind of what happens if a course doesn't run and you approve it. So that goes into your course guide and that's there. So it's kind of there permanently. So if students choose to select it, the only time maybe would be a pilot, like if we piloted something and we were just checking, but more than likely it'll be in the course guide. It doesn't go away. So what happens is you approve these go into our course guide and it really becomes student run, right? If we get enough students, we can run the course. So they don't really dissolve. It's also important for our shared services program so that we really keep these as options for our students. So they don't go away. So we probably should sometimes go through what we're offering, but they're there, okay? So they don't go away. In regards to like the credit, so remember like for Brighton area schools to graduate, you have to have 22 credits. Michigan Merit curriculum requires 18 credits, so you require more. And so in order for it to count, so for instance, pre-med science, all they'd have to do is do a crosswalk of those science standards that are required and say, we teach enough of these standards in this course for it to count toward a science like a third year science credit. And it might, I'd have to go back and look at how the course was approved, but then it could count for your third year science. For a course to count for a specific course, so let's say Algebra 2, you'd have to have enough standards that are covered in Algebra 2 and sometimes have a highly qualified teacher in addition to it. So remember, there's also that part of the law as well. So there's a little bit more work in some of these when you're crosswalking the standards, but there is the possibility sometimes. Am I helping
It does,
answer that? Okay.
absolutely. And I have just one other quick question. Sorry, but
it's fine.
We were talking, I think this came up last year. I remember watching the meeting, or maybe I was here before I was on the board. And someone suggested having like video clips for electives to push this out to the students so that they know these courses are coming. Is that still something?
So
that's being
I
worked
can't
on?
answer that specifically. I do know that do you want to answer it? Okay.
I know they're doing,
Yes.
they have the videos that the students do right before course selection time. And those go through all of the elective offerings and whatnot. I think they were looking at upgrading some of those. They had some that were pre-existing. But yeah, that is definitely something they're
It's
doing.
also why we try to do this November, December, because they, start enrolling, I think as early as February, March, they start going to those. So we try to get at least January is like really the cutoff, but we try to do it a little bit beforehand so they can start preparing some of the, recruiting efforts.
Thanks. Great.
So this marks, I thought at one of the years back when I was at Brighton, we had a 0 hour. We talked about opening up opportunities so we can come in, and we had one here as well, not that long ago. Was it, you were here with our 0 hour, correct? Just before?
I was here. I took a 0 hour.
So did I. So what happens is if you get students that are really interested in something, they may be able to get one of their required classes out of the way. So then it opens up the pre-med to them and their schedules. And I found for when I went here, I hit a 0 first, and heck, I was here probably in the afternoon too, even for a 7th hour, but probably was detention. But no one left. I know. Oh, shush. So anyway, but there are lots of opportunities I think that we can continue to work on. And I think the 0 hour is a great opportunity for required and online classes. Some of the classes that could be a required class could maybe be an online option. And then we don't do a lot with our kids, taking the college classes as much as some districts do. We have several. How many students do we have in college right now?
Oh, I don't remember the college. You mean the AP courses?
AP/taking the dual enrollment.
Oh, I don't know that number of time. I'm not even going to pretend.
I think at any one time, I think you're anywhere from 25% to 40%. We'd have to check the actual numbers of that. During the course of their high school career, I think it's about 60% of our graduates take at least one AP class or dual enrollment. So it's a nice large group, but I think at any one time, I think it's between 25 and 40.
Well, that would combine with AP, but I'm thinking the dual enrollment college outside of AP. But maybe we could get that number just to see how.
The
much.
early,
just recently.
the
I
early
just can't
college and
remember.
deep, I had that in one of those updates recently. I think we had 42 students that were involved in either the deep program, dual enrollment. There was a couple different options that were there. And I had that in one of those recent updates, and I think 42 was the number.
So again, that can start in what grade can students dual enroll?
You can dual enroll in 9th grade if you wanted to.
So, but those opportunities are huge for some. And so I would just like to keep the board's mind open if they could to the opportunities for getting these required classes out of the way in the 0 or 7th hour or online so that they can get freed up to take some of our great classes we offer during the day shift for the students. And just so they know they could do it. And it's something that we can put a 0 hour, I don't know what it would be. What would we do 0 hour? It's required that people would show up for. What do you think?
Well, I would say there are people that would argue that all of our courses are even the required courses are pretty fantastic. And I've been in there. So I just want to put that qualifier because we don't have any courses that aren't important for students. So
I don't disagree.
No, I know.
Whatever. The idea is it has to be taken as state regulated and the dual languages and all that stuff. So.
But on that note, I think that's also why it's important that we are able to then offer new AP courses that will meet the required Right, absolutely, because, like economics, we offer this now, it meets that requirement, and now these students are able to potentially get college credit, by taking it, through our AP. I mean, have we ever offered an AP program an AP class that never was able to move forward because of lack of interest?
I would say maybe your AP Physics, do you run that every year? I'm not sure. There's probably two
Physics.
different types of physics.
Yeah, there's Physics 1, and then there's the second
AP
year
Music
Physics.
Theory maybe is every other, there's some of them, but
Yeah.
I mean, not often. Very often you'll have enough
They
to get a
run.
baseline.
But we've never replaced a core class with an AP class where we cover both, have we?
Oh,
Like
they're-
the AP.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So most of your AP English courses will be in lieu of your 11th grade English or your 12th grade English requirement. Yeah.
Right.
We have AP,
Physics instead of physics.
Right.
yeah.
Government.
History, AP history.
There's a lot of AP that substitutes for required math.
So anyway, I think every opportunity we have where we have a potential AP course that could come forward that would replace a required course that is non-AP, I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. I mean, because but if you give if the students have the opportunity, I realize not everyone's going to go the AP route, but if that is an opportunity to get college credit, there's going to be a real incentive there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And again, and I think this NGROTC has an option for several other credits. I think I sent you the list that Howell's using for theirs.
Yeah, so we looked into that. So there's a few things in regards to CTE going that route. So we'll have to go through the state to get through CTE credit. So right now it's not a CTE credit. That just takes a few more hoops. And we would probably bring in Michelle Radcliffe, probably from the county, just to walk us through that because there's some crosswalks you have to do. But yeah, there are opportunities. So now you're getting into like the fine print of MDE, who's trying to keep us at 18 credits and find all these other loopholes on how you can get these 18 credits. So there's a lot of new nuances in there that say like CTE can count for this now or half of this and part of this. So going that route does help alleviate some of the scheduling that other students would have to take.
It could be like AP credit for kids that want to do that. Anyway.
Sure.
Just to clarify, like with CTE, you have to be in a completer program versus just taking a course. So you couldn't substitute a singular course. You have to be part of a sequence of courses that are approved by the state to be able to substitute as part of a personal curriculum. And again, those are nuances, but just wanted to clarify that it's not a single course. Like for example, JROTC, it would have to be a sequence. They would have to take a sequence of courses to be able to qualify for the personal curriculum. But we can get to that later on, but it's pretty complicated. But there are definitely options.
So with Howell's program, when they listed off the courses that they give credit for, we could apply to the same.
Yeah, so they did that. I asked them. So when that came through, I sent off an email. And so they did that just this last year is when they went through a career in tech ed and that took them the year to go through that process. So they did that last year. Before that, it was we followed actually what Howell's doing, which is the VAPA credit. And so this is the first year they're offering, I think, as career in tech ed.
I appreciate you following up on it because when I saw it, I said, geez, that makes a little sense. And I think like I said, I sent the email and all I did is ask and I saw that nice list of classes.
Yeah.
It was really a nice opportunity for students. So thank you for doing that.
All right. So that concludes all of the for future action items and moves us into the next item on our agenda, the board committee chair reports and community recognition.
I will go really quickly for the policy committee. You saw the work that we did. And we are not meeting in December. So we will pick back up in January after the organizational meeting unless the board gives us something to do in December, but we'd like to take December off.
All right. I would just like to point out, Mr. Conley and Mr. Johnson and I last Thursday night attended the annual Economic Development Council Livingston County annual meeting, an award ceremony. And as I think everyone is aware, our district's STEAM Center was awarded one of the 4 awards that was recognized by the Economic Development Council. This one in particular was the Talent Innovator Award. We were given this nice little plaque. Everybody can display it proudly in in the STEAM Center. But in any event, there were not in addition to the actual recognition of being the recipient of the award, there were several business leaders that spoke as part of kind of a roundtable talking about economic development and issues facing businesses based in Livingston County regionally. And they talked about strengths and weaknesses, what attracts them to the community, what they feel is going to be important for the growth. And all of them said that one of the things that they couldn't say enough about is the strength of the school districts and the programming that we offer to the students, and the opportunities, whether it's a CTE, the movement in furtherance of the STEAM initiatives, and all of the speakers really were very complimentary of the success of not only the success of the district, but the level of talent that we are producing within our district because of the programming that we're offering them. And they're very, encouraged to not only try to leverage that within their workforce, but it also is a way for them to sell the community when they're talking to their vendors or others that might be interested in potentially, calling Livingston County their home for their business and for their talent and for the employees that they would like to attract. So it was very rewarding and a proud moment for the Brighton contingent to hear those accolades, and obviously we're very proud of the award. So I don't know if I captured anything more, Mr. Conley?
I'd like to just thank Gavin for spending his night with Roger and I.
Yeah.
and the extra effort that he put out there. And I think he went, as he normally does, he tries to back up a little when it came credit for the bicycle or the mountain biking team. I recall when that started day one and Gavin signed on, and I think Gavin might have coached it. I don't know that for sure, but
I think
know
he did.
Gavin he just backed right up from the thing up here in the podium again. And I'm like, Gavin, and I didn't want to say anything because he did what he thought he should do. But I think that would just, I think we should be very appreciative. I mean, we've had a couple of days, he and I, but overall, you look at these years have gone by, a lot of good things have happened. And part of this pre-med course, he also got behind that as well. And those are big things. And so as we look at positive opportunities, I think Gavin being there with us was a great testament to his dedication. So I appreciate that.
All right. Anything further?
I'd like to say, I don't know if anybody got a chance to see Radium Girls when the dramatic arts put it on. I'm just blown away what the talent is. I know the musical gets all the, the big drama because it's pretty flashy. The dramatic arts did just an incredible job. And I just want to recommend, anything they do, that would be a great thing to do. They continue to impress me with every performance.
I just wanted to mention something quickly. I was at the academic letter lunch last week at the high school. I was a parent volunteer there, and there were 568 students that received their academic letter, which I think is amazing and astounding, and congratulations to them. 2 consecutive semesters of 3.5 or higher earns you that award. And there was a nice pizza lunch provided, sponsored by the PTO with donations from parents, and parents were invited to come in, and the media center was filled with parents and kids enjoying lunch together. It was really nice to see the recognition, and well-deserved for those students. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
One quick comment. Last board meeting, I mentioned the road extension behind Scranton Middle School and how nice and convenient it was for my son who's in junior football. He's now in 7th grade basketball. And this evening I went over and watched the basketball game at Scranton. And I have to just share with the board and the public that the parking lot that we now have on the front side of the building, in addition to what's the road in the back, is just such a huge improvement.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nice to see a lot of the grandparents who come to those events be able to just park close to the building and walk across the street. versus how it was with the median. Huge improvement.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that concludes everything on the agenda for this evening. Our next meeting is Monday, December 11 at 7 PM. This meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
I think about that like
At least,
every day.
at least my construction doesn't add 10 or 15 minutes at this time. Nobody's on the road.
Oh, no, that's what's always nice about.
Oh, this is yours too, if you want it.
Yeah.